I'm on with the Jose Gonzalez show this morning, ESPN Radio, 1430, Fresno market here. Talking about mental skills, confidence this morning. Jose, man, great to be on the show again. It's Mental Health Awareness Month as well. And so I appreciate you bringing me on the show and talking about mental skills, mental health, especially for athletes with the pressure that we're under now more than ever. So even at a young age. Man, so it is definitely starts very early. One of the things when parents bring their kids to me is, and I started working with younger athletes, over the last 2 years. I wrote a book about taming fear, growing confidence, and it's really for athletes and their parents. There's a section for parents, section for athletes, because what I learned was, coaching in college, working with professional athletes, oftentimes what they're dealing with started when they were younger. And the biggest thing that parents bring to the table when they come in, they say, "Hey, I really need you to work with my son or daughter on their confidence." And that's kind of like the biggest thing. Their confidence. They don't have any confidence. And I try to let them know, like, hey, well, confidence, that the art of that is the willingness to try, right? Kids can grow confidence, and their confidence can be ruined very easily at an early age. When they're trying something new, the likelihood is that they're not going to be great at it the first time, and so they have to learn. And if you're failing, you're probably learning, and if you're not failing, it's probably too easy. Especially in competitive sports. So as you continue to grow those skills, things get easier for you because you've got those skills, and now you're going to achieve more skills, and it's going to be hard, and they're going to have to try something new, right? And when they're doing that, if they fail, and whoever's around them, they're the people that are helping them or coaching them, they're even their parents for that matter, if the first thing they do is point out the mistake in the process, then or even the lack of result because of the mistake in the process, there's going to be a lack of willingness to try something new because they're afraid to make a mistake because they, because of the result. It's really this psychological behavioral conditioning that happens. We condition kids that if they make mistakes, they're the reason why we lost the game. They're the reason why we did all this stuff, and they don't want to do that. These kids don't want to lose the game. I oftentimes walk around games and on the soccer field or around baseball or whatever sport it is I happen to be around. I just kind of walk around and listen. Oftentimes I hear parents say, "You got to want it." I don't know any other kid. If you just threw a ball out to a bunch of 7-year-olds and watch them play, they all want it. They all want to win. They all want to do their best. They all want to try. It's when they get around, I think parents in general or coaches in general, they're trying to encourage, they're trying to motivate. And in their motivation, what they're doing is really hindering confidence because they're not fostering this process, and they're focused on the result. And especially at a young age, you got to foster the love of the game. You got to foster the love of the process. When you talk about, I was listening before, you're talking about these professional athletes. Kobe Bryant talked about the process. He was in love with the process. He was in love with getting up early. He was in love with doing the work. Even though it was hard, even though there was days that he didn't want to do it, he understood that the process led to results. I had a coach one year, one of my favorite coaches, one of my coaches that was one of the biggest mentors to me. He used to say when I was playing soccer, he used to say, after good soccer, goals will come. So if you're not going to play good soccer, if you're not going to play the way we've been practicing, then don't expect to get the result. And so I think a lot of times we have coaches that expect the result, but aren't fostering that confidence, aren't fostering the willingness to try to continue to do those things. And they're so worried about the result at 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, when the result's really going to matter at 18, 16, 15, whatever, when they get into that high school age group. No one's going to ask when they're 19 years old and the college scouts are around, going to say, well, hey, did you win the Little League championship when you were 9 years old? No one asks that. Yeah, I think, listen, the good news is and the bad news is there's about 400 different leagues and 400 different clubs and 400 different things, even just in the San Joaquin Valley. There's, I can speak for soccer. There's 5 competitive leagues that go up, and there's a new league that forms every single year. And every, and parents, especially of kids that have some athletic ability, want to make sure they're playing at the top level and all of that, which I don't fault any of that. I think it's great to be able to push kids that are showing, athletic ability to be able to do that. I will tell you this, which I think is interesting. I went and watched a youth soccer game, and we've talked about this before in other broadcasts. But you have Johnny who's out there, and he's just, maybe he has older brothers. His athletic ability is just is above the people that he's around, and he can just dribble, and because he works at it at home, he's got a ball at home, he's playing at home, and whatever. He's technically better than everybody else on the field. And what does he do? He dribbles past everyone and scores. As soon as Johnny gets the ball, he's just dominating, right? What do we do as parents and as a coach? What do we tell Johnny after he's scored 4 goals? We tell him, pass the ball. Don't just dribble and score. Dude, you're making the other team look bad. Hey, give it to Steve. He hasn't done anything. And guess what? Steve doesn't want to be out there. Steve doesn't care if he has the ball. And Steve's technically not probably at the place Johnny is. So what do we teach Johnny? Being too good is not good. Being too good is not good. So what happens when he continues to get better? Instead of saying, Johnny, you're really good, we need to move you into a place where you're going to be challenged so that you can continue to grow. I think when we look at that, should everyone get a trophy? I don't believe in that generally. But I do think at a young age, recreational soccer for kids who are learning to find out what they're good at. Recreational volleyball, recreational tennis, recreational things. I mean, going and playing 5 different sports when you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old to figure out what you're good at. And here's the other thing. At 6, 7, 8 years old, kids may be really good at something, but then their body changes when they turn 13. And now maybe they're not as good at that. But if they haven't played any other sports when they're younger, they don't even know that they could be good at basketball because now they just grew 7 inches and they never played basketball before. And they're like, hey, you should play the basketball because you're tall. You're super tall now, but now they're, maybe not they don't have those other skills. So I think playing as a young kid, teaching them all these different skills, finding out what they love, I think that's going to help them when it starts to get hard. Because when they turn into that really competitive age, when they get to, adolescence and they start to play in it, and they want to continue to grow and they want to continue to play at that, the ultimate level or that, ultimate competitive level, traveling around the country, doing all of those things, chasing that dream of being a professional athlete. I think, they have to have the love for the process. Again, understanding that they got to be fit. You're just talking about LeBron James and his fitness level. You look at Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was old like LeBron James, but guess what? People would come to him and say, how do we get fit for the season? He was still doing it, win a championship and then the next, 1 week off and going back into getting fit. But he's a professional athlete, man. You talk about periodization. We talk about periodization in athletics. Even the best athletes in the world need a rest. I look at injuries for kids. Nowadays we have more injuries, more knee injuries, more bodily injuries because we're overusing the same muscles, the same things over and over again. And, parents and coaches especially think, well, if I give them the time off, they're going to go to another club. They're going to go play a different league. So I got to keep them busy so I can keep these kids on our team. And it's just a rat race. It's turned into a rat race because, one, the clubs that are not necessarily the clubs, the organizations that are running these leagues, they need you to be in there fall, spring, summer. Why? It becomes a moneymaker. And if you're not playing, they're not making money. And so they have different leagues that come out and then clubs buy into that because if they do that, then they can have more things. So ultimately, when we're talking about confidence, I think you just really have to talk to your kids. You have to be open and honest with them. Let them be kids as well. They're not professional athletes at 8 years old. They don't even know what they're good at. And they're probably going to change in general. I think the best thing you can do in confidence with the idea that confidence comes from the willingness to try is when they're trying something new, they may not be great at it at the very beginning. Any skill, shooting, dribbling, any skill, they're not gonna be that good at it. Golf, a golf swing. If you take a little 7-year-old out and they swing the golf club, they may not be good at it at the first. But if you continue to give them confidence, like good try, keep do this, and focus on the process. For baseball example, if you focus on, if you're yelling at them, hey, let's get a hit. Well, it hits the result. If you talk about, remember what we did in practice. Get your elbow up. Make sure you're, whatever. Keep your eye on the ball. That's a very present comment, and it keeps them in the moment. And if they're doing the process correct, then the result should follow. And if they swing and miss, but they've done everything else right, then you can encourage them. Hey, that was a great, that was a great swing. Hey, this is a great swing. Just remember, keep your eye on the ball. Those are all process things. Instead of making them worried about getting a hit, or striking out, because that's a result, then they're worried about what happens if I strike out instead of what if I just have a good swing. If I have a good trap, if I have a good pass, hey, make sure check your shoulder. For soccer, it's a little bit different, but there's all processes involved that are gonna get that result. That's a good question. I think we as young kids, when you have your kids and they're young, oftentimes parents step into that role. My dad did the same thing. When I was a kid, I wanted to play soccer. He was a baseball player, but he read the books and he got out there and he wanted to make sure that I had a team to play on. And I see that a lot, with different sports. We don't have coaches and so the dads step up, and they try to do it and they try to foster those things. But a lot of times, dads coach the way they've been coached, and a lot of coaches, the old school style coaches of just stick and no carrot, that kind of stuff. Trying to motivate through criticism. This generation of kids has a hard time with that, and so I feel like we have to, as parents, how we separate that is tough. A lot of times when you're coaching your kid, they take it as a personal attack, almost like my dad is not happy with me when I make a mistake. And it's not my coach is unhappy. My daughter's she's a junior now, and when I started coaching her, I coached her when she was 12. But when she first got started, she was 6, and she would cry before every game because she was so nervous that she was going to lose. And so a dad stepped up, and I said, hey, I would help them. At the time, I was coaching with Fresno Pacific on staff. Or I just got done coaching with Fresno Pacific on staff. I was coaching with the Development Academy with California Odyssey at the time. And so I was more than qualified to coach the under 6 girls team at Star Elementary School. But I had a dad that was like, hey, I want to help out. My daughter's there. I said, you can run it. You be the coach, because my daughter doesn't want to listen to me. And every time I say something to her, she starts to cry because she's afraid that she did something wrong. So when that coach would say, I would tell the coach, hey, let's do this, let's do that. So I let him run it. And every time he said something to her, dude, she listened like nobody's business. And anytime I say something to her, she goes, my coach didn't tell me to do that. So, we had to do that. Now, as she got older, she calls me Alan on the soccer field. When it has to do with sports, she calls me Alan. She doesn't call me Dad, and she used to get mad when I would full name, when I would Cambria Ashton Fortune, when I would say her full name, she would get all frustrated. Why are you full naming me in front of my team? But eventually, that's what we had to do. She calls me Alan when she talks to her teammates. Hey, when Coach Allen, she says that all the time. She's had to separate that in her mind so that when I'm getting after her, when I'm frustrated with the way she plays as a coach. She has to realize, hey, my coach is unhappy with me, with the way I'm playing. My coach is pushing me. It's not my dad, it's my coach. And oftentimes when my son's, he's going to be a sophomore, and he's trying to play at a competitive level. He's got tryouts. We have tryouts this week, and he would come off for tryouts. I said, do you want to hear about this from your dad or from a coach? And most of the time they say, I want to hear from my dad. And most of the time I say, man, great job. Way to work hard. Went out there, you did, looks like you tried your best. Good job. I'm happy for you trying. Happy that you went out and put an effort out there. And then about 10 minutes later, usually, yeah, go ahead. Yep.